Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roche Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The transfer portal, it holds no bars. Any player can transfer to any program, including a team's most heated rivals. And that is what has happened with the Michigan Wolverines, because they just landed former Ohio State guard Roddy Gayle in the transfer portal. If this was a few years ago, this would have never happened. You would have never seen players leave a school to transfer to their biggest rival. Another player in this offseason has done it as well. Adin Holloway, the former Auburn guard, he's transferred to the Alabama Crimson Tide and Nate Oates. So again, any player is up for grabs. All of these teams, they can land any player that they want. And some of these players, I guess, just don't care about rivalries anymore. They just want to transfer to the school that's going to give them the most playing time, maybe some good NIL and a good fit to possibly help grow their game of basketball. And that's what Roddy Gayle is thinking with the Michigan Wolverines now that they got Dusty May. But I'm going to go over the Michigan Wolverines transfer portal additions that they've made in the past few days and go over whether I believe the Wolverines can be a solid team in Dusty May's first season as the head coach. Now, Dusty May, he is cooking in the transfer portal right now. And it is very easy to convince players to transfer to your program when you've got a ton of playing time available. And when you look at all the teams around college basketball, two of the teams that lost more players off this past season's squad have been the Kentucky Wildcats, and Mark Pope, he's got a lot of work to do to build up that roster since John Calipari left, and the Michigan Wolverines, almost all of their entire team has transferred or left the program in some way, shape, or form, and Dusty May, he is having to clean up the ashes of what Juwan Howard left the Michigan Wolverines with. But Michigan is on the right track right now because according to 247 Sports, the Wolverines have the fourth best transfer portal recruiting class right now, right behind UCLA, Kansas, and Indiana. And if Michigan keeps it up in the transfer portal, they could end up having the number one transfer portal recruiting class in college basketball in this offseason. Now, it is tough to rely on the transfer portal sometimes because if you bring in the wrong type of players that don't fit together, or because these guys are not familiar with each other and they're not used to playing together, sometimes bringing in so many players through the portal, it can actually act as a detriment to your team. But with the Michigan Wolverines losing so many players from this past season's team, Dusty May had no choice. He's just going to have to bring in as many players through the portal and hope it works in year one. But he's bringing in some really good players because, like I said, Roddy Gayle Jr., he was a good player for Ohio State this past season. He committed to the program when Chris Holtmann was the head coach, but then when you had Jake Diebler taking over as the interim head coach, now he's the full-time head coach, Roddy Gayle actually started playing better basketball. He averaged 14 points per game, 5 boards, and 3 assists this past season, and he's a 6'4" guard. So with him being kind of a combo guard, he can pass the ball, but he's also a pretty good scorer as well. That's going to really help out the Michigan Wolverines positionally next season because he can kind of play some point guard, but he's probably going to be playing more at the 2 position because that is his more natural position. But having that flexibility is always good for a program. Joe Tipton also tweeted out what I said earlier about how rivalries don't matter in the portal with Auburn, Adin Holloway going to Alabama, and Roddy Gayle going from Ohio State to Michigan. It's still crazy. Alabama transfer forward Sam Walters, he is also committed to Dusty May in Michigan. He just committed right after Roddy Gayle did, and he is a 6'9" player that was a freshman this past season for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and he chose the Wolverines over Ohio State, Kentucky, and Louisville. So Kentucky, like I've already mentioned, they need a lot of really good players in the portal, so that's tough for Mark Pope. They couldn't land Sam Walters. Ohio State, Jake Diebler's had a really good offseason so far with them, so they didn't have to have Sam Walters, but that still would have been a good addition for the Buckeyes. But I will say that Michigan, Ohio State, and Indiana have had great offseasons so far in the Big Ten, especially with the transfer portal. But these are the other guys that Michigan has landed in the last 3 days, not in the last month where the transfer portal has been going on. We're talking about in the last 3 days. Dusty May is not messing around like Joe Tipton said. He's brought an Alabama transfer forward, Sam Walters, which I already mentioned is going to be a big addition for Michigan because he can shoot threes. He's a young guy. He's only going to get better, and he was a former 4-star recruit as well, and he was already showing a lot of flashes with Nate Oates' talented squad this past season. So I think he's going to blossom at Michigan next year. Yale transfer center Danny Wolf has committed to Michigan. Now, it's always tough when you're bringing in guys from smaller schools, but a lot of those players from Yale, Princeton, Harvard, they usually translate their success to bigger schools. And Danny Wolf, he was a coveted player in the portal. A lot of top-name programs wanted him, so a big addition for Dusty May. Auburn transfer guard Trey Donaldson. He was a bench player this past season for Auburn, but he should get more playing time at Michigan because Auburn had a very deep squad. And Trey Donaldson, even though he was kind of on the back of the bench for the Tigers, he still made an impact for Bruce Pearl's squad. And I think he just wants more playing time. And he realizes with Dusty May having all these roster spots available and the fact that they just need a ton of players, especially guards, I think Dusty May made the right decision to add him. Roddy Gayle is the headline addition, though. Danny Wolf, he's going to have a massive impact for Michigan, and he might be the most important player that they've added because they definitely needed a center. They were lacking in the front court. But Roddy Gayle, the fact they brought him in from their arch rival in Ohio State, and he's still a younger player that was a former four-star recruit, and he averaged 14 points per game this past season. I think he could end up being the best player on Michigan's squad next season, or it could be Danny Wolf if he really plays well also. But I think Roddy Gayle is the biggest addition they've added. North Texas transfer guard Reuben Jones, he's also coming into the program. Michigan is definitely loading up on the backcourt, and they've brought in four-star guard Justin Pippen, who is the son of Scottie Pippen. And Scottie Pippen Jr., he was a solid player in college basketball for the Vanderbilt Commodores. He was on the shorter side, though, which is why he's struggling to make it in the NBA. But Justin Pippen, he's a bit taller, so that could really be big for Michigan, especially if he stays with the program and maybe develops over a year or two. I don't think he's going to be really ready to contribute at a high level immediately, especially since Michigan's brought in Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gayle. But definitely Justin Pippen, that's a good player to have for the Michigan Wolverines. And it goes to show you that Dusty May doesn't just want to add through the transfer portal. He wants to build through the high school recruiting ranks as well. And he's also bringing in Darrell Brooks, who's a point guard. We'll have to see if he can contribute at all next season for the Wolverines. But it hasn't all been roses for the Michigan Wolverines, however. Johnell Davis, he was not able to transfer to the Wolverines because of the fact that the academic admissions just bit Michigan yet again. Several off seasons in a row, Michigan has not been able to bring in a player because of their academic admissions. Caleb Love from North Carolina, I think a big reason he wasn't able to go to Michigan was because of that, which is why he ended up going to Arizona. But Johnell Davis, that's a tough loss for Dusty May for him not to be able to land him because he played at Florida Atlantic, and you know that Dusty May wants to bring in guys from his former school because he knows those players know his system, and Johnell Davis was one of the best players on that team. And Vlad Goldin, he's still on the table, though. All the crystal ball predictions have him going to Michigan, but now that they've landed Danny Wolf, I don't know how that's really going to fit, but you could play Danny Wolf and Vlad Goldin together maybe, but then that would give less minutes for Sam Walters, so we'll have to see what happens there. But regardless, even though everything hasn't been perfect for Michigan, the Wolverines just need players, and Dusty May, he's bringing in solid players. Danny Wolf, Roddy Gayle, Trey Donaldson, I like these additions for the Wolverines. Even bringing in Scottie Pippen's son, that's a solid addition as well. I think the Wolverines aren't done yet. He still has to bring in some more talented players, but when I look at the Big Ten, I don't know how it's going to shake out for next season, but Purdue, they're losing Zach Edey. They might not be as good next season. Michigan State with Tom Izzo, they haven't been as good the past few years, so maybe when you look at a team like Ohio State, he's building with Jake Diebler. Indiana's had a good portal off season. They could rise up. And then the Michigan Wolverines, if these transfer portal players can mesh together and Dusty May can continue to coach at a high level like he did at Florida Atlantic, he's got more talent now, I think there is a shot. Michigan could be a team in the top 5 of the Big Ten next season. It's not a gimme, though, because it's going to be tough for Dusty May to transition to the Big Ten. And with all these portal additions, maybe they won't mesh together. But I like the additions that they are making, and they stole a guy from their arch rival, and Roddy Gayle Jr. to be their headline transfer portal addition. And we'll have to see who else Michigan can bring in the coming days, because Dusty May right now, he is cooking in the transfer portal right now, and I'm sure he's not going to be done yet. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about Michigan getting Roddy Gayle from their arch rival in the Ohio State Buckeyes, and whether you think he will improve next season at Michigan and be able to help lead the Wolverines to a lot of success in Dusty May's first season as the head coach, and what you think about the other players that Michigan has been able to bring into the transfer portal so far, and which player you are the most excited about seeing suiting up for Michigan next season. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.